Free healthcare sounds like the best thing for America right now, right? Well, wrong. There is no such thing as a free lunch. Benjamin Franklin once said, "They who can give up essential liberty to obtain a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety." Let me address the issue of the big problem that has been passed and why America should be very worried. I'll begin by talking about where the free healthcare plan went sour from the start. The Constitution has been the standard for America for the ages. For any law to be constitutional, it must first and foremost enjoy the support and consent of a majority of the governed, from which all U.S. government powers are derived. This being said, 70% of Americans do not approve the bill that has been passed. Unconstitutional? Yes. Here is why. Number one, it must be within the limited federal powers enumerated in the Constitution. Two, it must enjoy the support of the vast majority of the governed, from which all federal powers are derived. Three, it must not infringe upon the individual rights of any citizen. 4, it must not infringe upon the rights of any state protected by the 10th Amendment. And 5, it must become law by way of legal, legitimate legislative powers. Process. 2 things that the Constitution does not approve of is communism and socialism, which has failed everywhere. America is not the exception. And besides that, where in our Constitution does it embrace these ideas? Nowhere. Karl Marx and Lenin are not America's founding fathers, in case you didn't know. Obama and his administration are acting against the majority of this nation, just as a dictator would do. In Greece, analysts believe Greece needs about 5,000 general practitioners to meet the demand. They currently have about 600. The lack of doctors is so bad that it is common for patients to offer bribes for appointments. In Canada, the Canadian Supreme Court ruled that the government must stop restricting the private sector from providing health care when the national system fails. Chief Justice Beverly McLaughlin wrote, "Access to a waiting list is not access to health care." Also, on this note, I believe it is unconstitutional that a majority of Americans were not given enough time to actually read this 1,000 plus page bill. Instead, we were left to believe what the politicians in DC had to say about it. And just as a reminder, politicians are corrupt, and yet we let them push us around. Not only is it mandatory to pay into the free health care, or otherwise face the consequences of a spendy fine. Oh, and last but not least, we will be paying them for free health care for a minimum of 5 years before it is actually put into effect. So what is so great about this healthcare reform that we are forced to pay them for 5 years without nothing in return? I did a little research and the results are surprising. With the free healthcare bill within the 1,000 pages come many ties that most do not realize. Here are a few in HR 3200. Number 1, page 29, lines 4 through 16. Healthcare rationing. You can only receive so much care per year, $5,000 per single and $10,000 per family. 2, page 30, section 123. There will be a government committee that decides what treatments and benefits you can receive. Page 42. The healthcare commissioner will choose your healthcare benefits for you. This means you will have no choice. Page 50, section 152. Healthcare will be provided to all non-U.S. citizens. Page 58. The government will have real-time access to individual finances, and a national health card will be issued. Page 127, lines 1 through 16. Doctors and the American Medical Association will be told by the government how much they can make. Page 170, lines 1 through 3. Any non-resident alien is exempt from individual taxes. This means that you and I will pay for them. Page 241, lines 6 through 8. All doctors, no matter what specialty, will be paid the same. Page 268, section 1141. Government regulates rental and purchase of power-driven wheelchairs. Page 354, sections 1177. Government will restrict enrollment of special needs. Page 425, lines 4 through 12. Government mandates advanced care planning consultation. This means seniors will be interviewed every year for health issues and decisions made as to what care they can and cannot receive. Page 425, lines 22 through 25. And pages 426, lines 1 through 3. Government provides an approved list of end-of-life resources. This means that they will guide you into death. It may be just me, but reading this really puts how the government runs things in a scary and unfamiliar perspective. My question is, why are we letting them run almost literally our lives? There is not even one thing the government has run efficiently. They developed the tax code, and why would we want them running healthcare being so complex? First off, we have a bill written by a committee whose chairman says he does not understand it. A Congress who has hardly read it, but exempts themselves from it, and it was signed by a president who smokes and hasn't read it, with funding administered by a treasury chief who never paid his taxes, and all to be seen by a general surgeon who is obese, and lastly, funded by a country that is broke. This is completely messed up. Joe Mazzarelli makes this argument. Quick, try to think of one government office that runs efficiently. Fannie Mac? Freddie Mac? The Department of Transportation? Social Security Administration? Department of Education? There isn't a single government office that squeezes efficiency out of every dollar the way the private sector can. The last thing we want for them running is to be running the physical and mental health of America. In saying this, I hope you'll realize how big of a mistake that has happened. It will now be more difficult to overturn this as it was to put in place. As an American, it is your duty to, number one, call the White House to let your voice be heard dialing the comment line at 202-456-111. 2. Inform your American neighbors of the problem at hand, because it is a big problem. Number 3, thinking nationally and acting locally through protests, tea parties, and actually informing yourself what goes on in this world. I've informed you how free healthcare is unconstitutional, given you examples of other countries' socialized healthcare, and read straight out of the bill consequences due to the passage of this free healthcare bill. Clearly, free healthcare puts this nation on the wrong path. No longer are we a first nation, but rather a secondary nation, right along with communism and socialism, which in return defeat the purpose of the Constitution. If you do not believe what I have said, then take time to research on your own, and be careful, because the mainstream media is just very deceiving and very biased. There is still time to shut this free lunch the majority of Americans do not want down.